Hey, good morning, everyone. It's time to start our session. We have quite a bit to get through today, so I do want to try to start on time and keep us on time as much as we can. Just a few words first about some notes for general logistics here. We do encourage, if you're in the room, please make your way down here towards the front so you can hear better and we can see you as we're having conversations. If you do need to leave during the session, please do so during a break or transition between speakers. That would be helpful also. For housekeeping here, if you don't know, the Wi-Fi code here at the hotel is RIC, R-I-C 2026, RIC 2026. And please remember to silence any of your electronic devices so that we don't have distractions during the discussions. And then the sessions will be recorded so that people can see these if they're not able to attend at this time. For the questions, if those in the room, if you will just scan the QR code, you can ask questions through that. If you are joining us virtually, there should be, down to the right side of your screen, you'll see a tabs for Q&A, and you can ask your questions there. So I think that's enough to start with the housekeeping part. So let me officially welcome everyone to our session on Accelerating U.S. Government Global Nuclear Energy Leadership. Thanks to all of those who braved the weather this morning after 2 very nice days for the RIC. The March weather caught up with us this morning, so I do appreciate folks that are with us here in the room today. So by way of introduction, those of you who don't know, I am David Skeen. I am the Director of the Office of International Programs here at the NRC. Just a little bit about me. I've been with the agency about 35 years after spending about 15 years in the construction business and building nuclear plants. So I've served in several roles here within the agency. At one point I was the reactor policy advisor for Jeff Merrifield, Commissioner Merrifield, and then I was the Chief of Staff for Chairman Dale Klein when he was here. Then I moved on as the Deputy Director for Engineering within our Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation. And then when the accident at Fukushima happened, I was chosen to lead a special group called the Japan Lessons Learned Division for about 3 years, where we helped the folks in Japan as well as figure out how to make plants safer here in the U.S. And then for the last 12 years, I've been with the Office of International Programs. So I am pleased to introduce today 4 very esteemed colleagues from across the U.S. government, and they've all agreed graciously to join us on the panel today. So first up, let me start with Bego Aranguren. She is the Federal Program Manager for the Advanced Reactor International Safeguards Engagement Program. Again, it's much easier to say ARISE program, so she does follow that program. And she is at the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration. So she has supported ARISE since 2022, helping developers integrate safeguards into their reactor designs to support international deployment. She has a doctorate in nuclear engineering and will be presenting on the ARISE program as well as other NNSA activities that engage with the nuclear industry. Following her presentation, we will hear from Mr. Carl Kress, who is the Energy Sector Team Lead at the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. Carl's been with the U.S. TDA for 25 years after working at the U.S. International Trade Commission, as well as serving on the staff of members of Congress, and also was in private practice on international trade law. Carl will be presenting on the U.S. TDA's activities to develop priority infrastructure projects that help match U.S. companies with local project developers abroad. And then finally, we will hear from Ms. Barbara Ferrer. She is the Deputy Executive Director of the Advocacy Center, which resides within the International Trade Administration. Barbara leads a team of over 30 international trade experts who cover global market opportunities and sector leaders who coordinate interagency efforts on priority industries such as nuclear energy. Prior to joining the Advocacy Center, Barbara served in the Foreign Commercial Services in Sofia, Bulgaria, and as the head of the Commercial Services Office at the American Consulate in Florence, Italy. So with that, I would like to kick off the discussion. So if we go to the next slide here. The Commission, NRC, has long been seen the value of having a direct role in international activities to support nuclear regulators around the world. This perspective informs our international strategy and encourages the NRC to demonstrate leadership worldwide in nuclear safety and security. We cooperate directly with our regulatory counterparts or in multilateral fora in many ways. We share technical information through direct exchanges, such as our nuclear safety research efforts that are conducted jointly with key partners around the globe. We also share regulatory information. For example, we are currently collaborating with regulators in Poland and Bulgaria to help them prepare for licensing of the Westinghouse AP1000 reactor design. We also initiate personnel exchanges where the NRC hosts regulatory counterparts so they can be directly involved in our licensing and inspection activities, and also we can learn from them during their time here. We also send NRC staff to spend time with other regulators, usually for short-term training or for intensive technical exchanges as needed. We also participate in bilateral and multilateral regulatory development partnerships, as well as supporting other international capacity building activities with our sister federal agencies. Next slide, please. So beyond the cooperative efforts on the previous slides, I do want to briefly highlight just a couple of our main programs that we do for assistance here within the Office of International Programs here at the NRC. We have a radiation sources program, and it is focused on helping international regulatory partners meet their commitments under the International Atomic Energy Agency's Code of Conduct on the Safety and Security of Radioactive Sources. This improves the protection of people and the environment in partner countries and also contributes to the American security around the world by ensuring that radioactive sources are properly controlled. On the nuclear energy side, we have a similar program focused on developing regulatory capacity in partner countries who are either embarking on a nuclear power program for the first time or for countries who are expanding their nuclear programs. We help partner countries establish appropriate legal and regulatory frameworks. We establish licensing regimes. We stand up inspection programs and meet obligations under the international conventions. To go beyond such training and support, we also have signed over 50 bilateral agreements for the exchange of technical information that allow for a deeper cooperation with our partners, including sharing computer simulation codes, exchanging personnel, sharing information that would otherwise be protected, and such as proprietary information from the specific reactor designs. Of course, all of that is done with the approval of the reactor vendors themselves. So, next slide. But, as we say, the NRC does not work alone. This session will emphasize the collaborative nature of many of the U.S. government agencies that work to maintain nuclear leadership around the world. The NRC regularly provides support to other U.S. agency efforts, including participating in the FIRST program from the Department of State in events across the world. For example, just recently, over the last few years, we have supported workshops in Ghana, Kenya, Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, El Salvador, Estonia, and Armenia. And that's not the whole list, but that's key partners. We've also participated in the Department of Commerce events, such as their public-private partnership SMR working groups, and those are both in Europe and Asia. We've also joined in NNSA activities, including workshops led by their International Safeguards Engagement Program and their work on radioactive source and nuclear facility security. The NRC also supports broader efforts to demonstrate U.S. leadership by participating in multilateral efforts and activities, such as the IEA's Nuclear Harmonization and Standardization Initiative, as well as the soon-to-be-launched, we hope, Atomic Technologies License for Applications at Sea, or ATLAS program that they are standing up. And this is for floating reactors. We see these activities as part of a cohesive U.S. government whole. As Chairman Nee and prior NRC leadership have consistently said, the NRC is independent, but not isolated from the rest of the U.S. government. We work together with our federal partners to demonstrate nuclear leadership around the world, making the United States an essential partner for nuclear energy deployments and enabling reactor and technology exports. With that, I would now like to hand off to my colleagues on the panel to discuss their efforts to accelerating the nuclear energy leadership around the world. So next we're going to hear from Dr. Bego Aranguren. And so take the floor, please.
Thank you guys for coming today, and thank you to the NRC for inviting me to be on this panel. I am very excited to talk to you all about what the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration is doing to support U.S. industry in the nuclear field. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so why am I here today? This administration has highlighted the importance of unleashing U.S. energy dominance, including nuclear, and including the rapid deployment and export of next-generation nuclear technologies. DOE and NNSA works with U.S. industry by leveraging non-proliferation considerations to make U.S. designs more competitive in the international market. We focus on making facilities easier to safeguard, more secure, and more resistant to nuclear proliferation. So before I go into how NNSA supports industry in these three areas, I'm very quickly going to summarize what we mean by international safeguards, international security, and nuclear proliferation. So next slide, please. Okay, so let's start with IAEA safeguards. What are they and what do they accomplish? During his Atoms for Peace speech, President Eisenhower addressed the UN Security Council and proposed to share nuclear material and information for peaceful purposes with other countries through a new international agency. This led to the establishment of the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, in 1957. The goals of the IAEA are to detect diversion of declared nuclear material, to detect misuse, and to detect undeclared nuclear material or activities in a state. The IAEA is able to do this by implementing international safeguards, which are a set of legal agreements and technical measures that allow the IAEA to independently, and that's a very important word, independently verify that nuclear materials and technologies are used only for peaceful purposes. So the US, being a nuclear weapon state, has slightly different international safeguards obligations than a lot of these other states or countries. But countries where US industry will export nuclear reactors, advanced reactors or small modular reactors, are subject to international safeguards. So considering your potential customers' obligations and requirements gives your design a competitive edge over those that could be harder to safeguard. Good news is that we can help you get there, but before I talk about that, if we could go to the next slide, I'm going to highlight some international security points and why it matters to US industry. So international nuclear security are the measures and activities undertaken to prevent malicious actors from acquiring nuclear materials, technologies, or knowledge, and to prevent the sabotage of nuclear facilities. For companies that are seeking to export reactors overseas, the importance of robust international nuclear security can be summarized in these four groups. 1, to gain reputation and trust. Demonstrating a proactive approach to nuclear security enhances a company's reputation as a responsible and trustworthy partner. This is crucial for securing export licenses and gaining public acceptance in both the exporting and importing nations. 2, ensure market access and competitiveness. Countries receiving nuclear technology prioritize suppliers who can ensure the highest security standards. Companies that can effectively integrate security features into their designs and support the development of robust security infrastructures in client nations will have a significant competitive advantage. 3, maximize risk mitigation. The potential consequences of a nuclear security incident, whether from theft or sabotage, are severe. Companies involved in nuclear exports have a vested interest in mitigating these risks to protect their investments and long-term viability. And finally, adhering to regulatory compliance. Exporting nuclear technology is subject to a complex web of international and national regulations, guidelines, and best practices. Compliance with these frameworks, which are constantly evolving to address emerging threats, is non-negotiable for market entry and sustained operation. For companies looking to export these technologies, it is most efficient to take these considerations into account early in the design process. And next slide, please. The last concept that I will cover today before I get into how we support industry with these three things is proliferation resistance. So you can see the definition for proliferation resistance on the slide, but put a different way, proliferation resistance incorporates permanent design modifications to ensure that a nuclear system can be used only for its stated peaceful purpose. The driver for proliferation resistance is to reduce the amount of materials of weapons interest in a facility. Proliferation resistance is an asset to the U.S. nuclear industry as it provides an additional layer of security to a nuclear system, increasing the difficulty for would-be proliferators. NNSA has developed an assessment that provides key proliferation resistance insights for industry partners and an objective technical pathway towards system optimization. NNSA focuses on enhancing the proliferation resistance of a system, but not fundamentally changing your technology. Okay, so next slide. Now we get into the good stuff. How do we help US industry with international safeguard security and proliferation resistance? So our goal is to prepare advanced nuclear technology stakeholders to meet the highest standards of non-proliferation. NNSA has developed 3 programs, one focusing in each technical area, but we're all structured in a very similar way. And we all separate our work into 3 main lines of effort. The first one is our engagement with US industry. NNSA engages with US industry in 2 distinct ways. The first one is a very technical one-on-one engagement where NNSA provides funding to experts at US national labs, and they directly engage with US industry on very design-specific non-proliferation challenges. This is done under an NDA because it does address very design-specific things. A different way in which we engage with US industry is much more at the conceptual level. So we offer trainings and courses and workshops where we usually will talk to a broader group of vendors because we don't have to share detailed design information at that level. A good example of this is our annual Safeguards and Security by Design course. This will be the 4th year that we're offering this course and will be at Idaho National Lab. We rotate labs every year and will take place at the end of September. This is a course where we collaborate with the NRC, and we've had participation every year, which has been really great and very useful for US vendors to understand that differences between NRC safeguards and international safeguards and how to address both. The second line of effort that programs and NNSA offer is to build non-proliferation knowledge base and capacity for advanced nuclear. This is a very fancy way of saying that we fund hundreds of non-proliferation experts across the US national labs to identify and address non-proliferation challenges that are introduced by advanced small modular reactors and associated fuel cycle facilities. So every year we look at new gaps or challenges that once they are solved, will facilitate the deployment of US technology. We don't only look at new technologies, we also look at new deployment models. And so, for example, the NRC earlier mentioned civil maritime applications of nuclear power. That is a very big topic lately, and so we work with the Department of State and with the NRC and with other partners within the interagency to start addressing some of those questions. And finally, we prepare stakeholders for new technologies and deployment models. We want to make sure that when you guys are ready to export your technology, so are the other stakeholders. So a very good example for this, for international safeguards, would be we work very closely with the IAEA to make sure that, again, when you're ready to export your technology, the IAEA is ready to safeguard your technology in that customer state so that there are no delays when you start exporting. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just very quickly want to highlight some other courses or trainings that we have offered to US industry. In this first photo on the left, you see a group of US industry that we were able to take to Canada. So as I mentioned, the US being a nuclear weapon state, our international nuclear safeguards obligations look slightly different. So by visiting nuclear facilities in a non-nuclear weapon states, US industry can see what IAEA safeguards actually look like in real life and start to imagine how that could be incorporated into your designs. This has been a very, very successful trip that we've been able to host to work very closely with the CNSC in Canada twice, and we also were able to go to Europe once, working very closely with Euratom to visit facilities there. The other photo is at Argonne National Lab at the metal facility where we put US industry in the shoes of the IAEA, and it was a very eye-opening experience, and we wanted to portray the importance of timely and accurate information from US industry and the role that you guys play in supporting the agency verify and achieve their goals. Next slide, please. So my last slide, thank you so much for listening. This is the QR code for the US Nuclear Nexus page. This is the way in which US industry can request support from NNSA. So please, if you're interested in anything that I mentioned today, make sure to go to this link or scan this QR code and request help from us. We are excited to work with all U.S. vendors and designers, and we're here to help you guys and facilitate your export. So as a quick reminder, by working with us, you will gain access to world-renowned experts at the national labs, leverage resources, infrastructure, and tools from DOE. You can incorporate non-proliferation considerations as part of a comprehensive system-level approach, improving deployment readiness. You can be better prepared to initiate dialogues with potential customers and minimize risks of potential costly and tardy retrofits and redesigns. So thank you so much. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Arangoren. And so now we will hear from Carl from USTDA.
Good morning, everyone, online and here. Thank you very much, David, and for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak about USTDA and how we can work with our partners, with U.S. industry and our partners around the globe. Again, I'm Carl Kress. I'm the Regional Director for the Middle East, North Africa, Europe, and Eurasia. I'm also the co-lead of our Worldwide Energy Sector team. Our two main hats at the agency and our program department are the regional, but then we also have different sectors such as digital infrastructure, energy, critical minerals, and so on. Next slide, please. So our mission, we focus on strategic priorities, projects that are of strategic importance to the United States and to our partners around the world. We work in developing and middle income countries. The definition is through the World Bank, which the World Bank standards comes out every July 1st, so that defines which countries we're authorized to operate in. We focus on by statute, U.S. jobs. We measure that through exports. So we're looking to see how we can help U.S. industry move their product, goods, services, and technologies overseas to work with our foreign partners. And our foreign partners, through this work, obtain high-quality infrastructure projects. Next slide, please. So our tools. We have two baskets of tools. We have a grant program where we provide grant funding for feasibility studies, technical assistance, pilot projects, and front-end engineering and design studies. These are always tailored directly to what the needs of a specific project are, what that local project sponsor needs. These always are done by U.S. industry. Now, our program is not tied in the sense that if we work with someone, they're not obligated to buy a U.S. nuclear reactor or whatever. Of course, we want them to, but we're setting an opportunity. We're making partnerships and bringing people together. But for our actual grant work, it is completed by a U.S. company. And when a grantee in a foreign country comes to us, interested in working with us, they can either already have a U.S. company in mind who they want to work with, a consulting engineering firm or such, or we can do a competition and find a company to work with them. I would note that we never push a particular company or technology or anything like that. We're looking for what do the locals need and help them make a good selection for who would actually accomplish what they're trying to achieve. And these grants, in the nuclear area, are typically more expensive than the types of grants we do around the world. Our grants, on average, are around $750,000 to $1.5 million, depending on the size of the project. Note that we typically do very large projects with U.S. export potential in the hundreds, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, or tens, if not more. And nuclear, obviously, is very high on that. And we don't have the bandwidth to do very small projects. As my colleagues know, it takes as much effort to move $50,000 as it does to move $2 million. And so we tend to do larger grants. For the nuclear work, we've gone as high as $28 million at this time. Others have been more in the $2 to $3 million range. But again, it really depends on what's needed in a particular project. Then we also have partnership building activities, which is reverse trade missions, where we bring delegations to the United States to look at goods, services, and technologies. We do technical conferences and workshops as well. Next slide, please. Priority sectors, as mentioned, we have several: critical minerals, digital infrastructure, energy, and transportation. I would note we don't do everything in any of those particular areas. It's a focus on where is there a particular U.S. export and opportunity. For instance, in energy, clearly Nuclear is one of our priorities, as well as U.S. LNG and the gas sector in general, not so much, say, solar or wind. Next slide, please. Our results. So for every, in our current evaluations period, for every dollar we have put into our program, we have $226 in U.S. exports. So obviously some of our projects are at 0, others at 10 million, others hundreds, if not billions of dollars. So it's a wide range, but we're very proud of that number. And our partners have received over 4,000 infrastructure projects that have gone forward. Overall, our record at this point is $127 billion in U.S. exports that we have generated. Next, please. And I would notice these numbers, our monitoring and evaluation folks are actually pretty conservative, so we need proof, and so those are pretty solid numbers. Just to note here, we were mentioned in one of the executive orders last year of just really emphasizing the fact that USTDA's programs are an important part of the U.S. nuclear export program. Next slide, please. I need to, excuse me. I need to take a playbook from Laura and her much better slide that has lots of logos on it, so next time I'll make sure and do that. But this is just a few of the people that we work, other agencies that we work with on. We co-fund large grant activities, we look for technical expertise from some of our partners, financing and event planning and execution. I will note also fundamentally we deliver our services through U.S. industry, so for, NEI and USNIC are of course, and their members are of course clear and very strong partners in all of the work that we do. Next slide. Here's the team. You can talk to any of our team members. I will say if you go to our website, we're broken down by the regions. You can look and see, and I see someone taking a picture. You're welcome to take pictures. My understanding is that these will be, all the slides will be made public after the event on the website. So, but these are the main contacts in the nuclear area, so you can reach out. One note on how to bring a project to us, and this is, we don't want to see 20-page proposals. We don't want you writing it. We don't want to read it, at least initially. What we want to do is let us know what you're interested in. You want to work in a particular country, you have a project in mind, send us an email or call us up. The email is probably the best, but send us an email, and all of our email addresses are first letter, last name at USTDA.gov with the who, what, where, why, when. What are you trying to achieve? Who do you want to work with? And so on. If it's something that looks like we can do, we will then ask for more information, set up a call. If it's something that we can't do for one reason or another, we'll let you know right off and save you time from trying to pursue it further. And also, we work very closely with our colleagues around the world. So if you are from another country, you can reach out to the commercial team or the economic team at the local embassy, in addition to us, and talk to them about what you're trying to do, and they can also reach back to us as well. We rely very much on their expertise and their knowledge of the local environment to see if a project is viable and makes sense for USTDA. Next slide, please. Just a few examples of types of projects that we're excited about that we've done. We're currently doing work with deep isolation on a borehole disposal feasibility study in Bulgaria. We've completed the initial feed study for Romania for NuScale. There's a feed which went on to feed 2 and so on, so we're excited about that. And then also did the feed study with Poland, for Poland with the Westinghouse AP1000 builds that are in process. And each of those, for the Romania and the Poland, this was cost sharing with other US government agencies. Again, it's showing the partnership. Next slide. Technical assistance grants, we're doing several things helping with countries who are trying to look at different technologies in the SMR realm. Also siting assessment. We did work in Ukraine on a licensing gap analysis to look at how they could, what the best path for them is to make changes to their existing regulations to be able to accommodate SMRs. Next slide. Reverse trade missions, bringing delegations to the United States. I personally love these because I get to go see exciting places like INL. I went for my first time to INL through when we brought a delegation from Romania, which is fantastic. And then we've had recent delegations from other countries as well. Next. Technical workshops. We had one last year or a year and a half ago at Oak Ridge National Lab. Again, great opportunity to go to a very exciting place. We've had, this is focused on Europe and deployment of nuclear technology in Europe and Eurasia. We had done previous workshops in Belgium as well as in Romania, and hot off the press, we have one coming up in London, July 15th and 16th. So we're in the initial planning phases, so if this is of interest to you, we'll be inviting delegates from all around the region, from Europe and Eurasia, and inviting, of course, U.S. companies to come. And so there'll be more details soon on our website, so pay attention for that. Next slide. And that's it. Happy to answer any questions. Again, my inbox is open. Happy to discuss afterwards or to have any follow-up conversations. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much, Carl. And now we will move forward with Barbara.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate being here, and thank you for having the Advocacy Center as part of this panel. So I'm kind of the closer in terms of the panel speakers, which is very appropriate for the Advocacy Center. Next slide, please. So some of you may be familiar with us. We are a part of the Department of Commerce, and I'm going to speak specifically about advocacy services today. The Department of Commerce, and specifically our International Trade Administration and Global Markets Unit, offers really a suite of services for U.S. exporters, everything from matchmaking to trade missions and trade fair assistance to due diligence. Within all of the ways we support U.S. exporters, there is one specific tool that is we find is very effective and is also very appropriate for the civil nuclear industry, which is advocacy. So advocacy is the way we support U.S. companies that are bidding on specific foreign government procurements or other strategic projects. Next slide. It's our mission to get the whole U.S. interagency together to level the playing field for our U.S. companies that are competing on specific transactions for overseas. Why do we do this? Because our foreign competitors have their governments behind them, and they are using all of their political influence to win those contracts for their companies. So we really have to do the same for our U.S. industry to maintain and promote U.S. competitiveness. Next slide. We like to say we help companies, or our mission is to do three things really: compete globally, create jobs, U.S. jobs, and counter foreign adversaries. Next slide. So how do we help U.S. companies compete globally? By promoting fairness and transparency on foreign procurements, through government-to-government engagement. So advocacy is really about our U.S. government officials weighing in with foreign government decision makers to support the bid or the pursuit of a U.S. company and those U.S. companies' interests, and to make sure there's no unfairness in procurement processes, really to support industry in that way. And as I mentioned, we do it to counter foreign government political pressure as well. Advocacy is always on a case-by-case basis. So if there's not a blanket advocacy for a country, every specific contract that a company may be pursuing would be a separate advocacy case, and a company applies for advocacy when they are pursuing a project. So, we talked today a little bit about the many ways the U.S. government supports the nuclear industry from very upstream to kind of downstream. And if we think of it as a chain reaction, as this panel is appropriately titled, we are kind of at the end of that chain reaction. So after we've laid all the groundwork with all the tools of the U.S. government that you've heard about, then we have U.S. companies that are actually coming in and bidding on a project. And that's where advocacy and the Advocacy Center comes in and kind of coordinates across the interagency the U.S. support for a specific company's bid. So it is very much a team sport. Next slide, please. What we do it, the reason we get out of bed every day is because what we do creates jobs. So according to our Department of Commerce chief economist, for every $1 billion in U.S. exports, 4,100 U.S. jobs are supported, either creation of new jobs or the maintaining of jobs that are already there. So this is really important. When a contract is signed by a U.S. company, obviously money starts flowing and the company starts thinking about what employees, what personnel they're going to need to support that contract. So that is a direct benefit to the U.S. economy. Next slide. As I mentioned, advocacy is definitely a team sport. We are all about approving a case, doing the vetting for the whole of the interagency. So once we approve a case for advocacy, then that clears the officials from not only the Commerce Department, but the State Department, DOE, et cetera, to be able to go in and weigh in on that for that specific company, on that specific contract. And it is very much a team sport. And, we love to get our, Secretary of Commerce involved. Our ambassadors overseas are often involved. I always say the core of any case team is we have an advocacy center regional manager or case manager based at the Advocacy Center in Washington, but they work hand in glove with our Foreign Commercial Service officers overseas. They get the ambassadors involved, and then on the Washington side, we are always on the phone and on email with our Department of Energy colleagues, our Department of State colleagues, USTDA in many cases, figuring out which tools we can leverage to support a U.S. company's bid. Next slide, please. Outcomes. So in 2025, we delivered $244 billion in value for U.S. contracts signed by U.S. companies with foreign governments with advocacy support, and that supported over 800,000 American jobs. Next slide, please. And we had some great. This is not just last year, but overall. We have a great portfolio in the civil nuclear sector. Actually, I think of the nuclear sector is probably the largest subsector overall of our energy portfolio. We right now have $352 billion in projects, 74 cases with $179 billion in U.S. export content. And those cases really run the full range of the industry. So from cases for the building of nuclear reactors, the deployment of SMRs, the decommissioning nuclear fuel, and consulting and other kinds of services of all kinds. So there's no threshold also for advocacy. So you can get advocacy for a small consulting contract. You can get it for a $10 billion project. There's no limitations, let's say. And in the past 5 years, we have had 22 wins for contracts signed by U.S. companies with advocacy support, valued at about $10 billion with about over $4 billion U.S. export content. Those wins have been for projects in Canada, Poland, Bulgaria, Ghana, to name a few. And I know that my colleagues here at the table, all of those countries sound familiar for projects they're working on. As I said, this is a team sport, and I think every one of those contracts that U.S. companies have won have had significant collaboration of the whole interagency. So, this is a great team effort. Next slide, please. Energy security and civil nuclear advocacy. So our work in this field is only growing under this administration, I would say. Carl mentioned the EO on the deployment of advanced nuclear technologies. How does that impact advocacy? Well, given the mandate and the orders that are coming directly from the White House, our highest levels of government are willing to go to bat for the U.S. industry. They have a mandate to support industry, to support exports. So we are getting, when we ask them to advocate, we are pushing on an open door, and we have more willingness than we have ever had, I think. And I was very impressed by Laura's presentation. She talked about what a great demand they have from partners to work with us. So I think we have industry that is very dynamic right now, going after opportunities, and we also have foreign partners that really want to work with us. So I think it's a very unique time for us to be, really, doing all we can to take advantage of this unique moment to grow our industry and support U.S. exports. Next slide. One thing I'll mention, which may be new to some of you and is a relatively new authority within the Advocacy Center, we have something called our STAT program, Strategic Transactions. It's the advocacy track. So until last year, if you came to us with a project that was not structured as a procurement, we would have to say, well, it doesn't really meet the definition of advocacy. But we have updated our policy, and our authorities have been expanded so that if a project is structured as a concession, such as for critical minerals, and it's going to support the U.S. supply chain, we can now consider that for advocacy. And also, if it is a strategic investment project, for instance, if a company is bidding on a build, own, operate model or a public-private partnership model, we can consider those kind of transactions for advocacy, because we were so clearly leaving some projects out that were in the national interest for us to support. So we have gotten those additional flexibility, and I think that mirrors some of the things that you'll see across the interagency. I know XM, for instance, has gotten greater flexibility in some of their contract requirements and eligibility requirements as well. Next slide, please. And so in terms of STAT transactions, I think we have about 20 cases right now under the STAT program. So for context, our overall advocacy portfolio is about 1,450 cases. So 20 are under the STAT. We're really going for quality over quantity, I think, where we want to make sure we're supporting those projects through this new authority that are really in the U.S. national interest. So many of them are in mining and critical minerals sectors. Some are in kind of the telecom and utilities, transportation infrastructure, especially as it could relate into and support the U.S. supply chain. And then energy is a big one for this new authority. So those are some of the areas we're working in. Next slide. Okay, and so this is just to conclude. So think of us as doing three things. We work on deals. We try to help U.S. companies sign contracts, and that is our metric. We don't report a win for our office until the contract is signed, so we are really there with the companies through to the end. We do interagency coordination. It is, the Advocacy Center is most of all a coordinating office, there to make sure somebody is kind of quarterbacking on behalf of the U.S. company's pursuit. And then we do outreach, try to make sure as many companies as possible know that they can use advocacy and other Commerce Department services. So that's what I'm doing here today. And so I'll welcome your questions during the Q&A. But one thing I wanted to mention, At the end is, I'd like to introduce Dominique Mack, who is our new energy sector lead for the Advocacy Center. So feel free to please reach out to her, talk to her afterwards, and you'll probably be hearing from her and interacting with her in the future going forward. So that's it for me.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara, and thanks to all of our panelists today. These are great presentations, and so it has generated some questions here, so we'll get through as many as we can. I see we got about 25 minutes or so left, so that's very good that we didn't take up all the time with just presentations. So I'm going to stay right there with you, Barbara, as the first question. We got a question that says, if a vendor has a multinational supply chain, do you work with other countries to support joint bids?
We can, so we look at that on a case-by-case basis. A lot of times in a very large and complicated projects, there are multiple countries involved, and sometimes we even do joint advocacy with other countries. It depends on the country, of course, also, and our relationship with that country, and as long as what we're mainly concerned with is their material benefit back to the U.S. economy.
All right, thank you. Here's one for Carl. So it's a multi-part question. So are you seeing trends in engagement on nuclear infrastructure projects? If so, what is growing? Are the trends linked to the work on other projects such as FIRST?
Thank you. I would say one of the things that has been over the last several years, well, actually, I can step back with this question. So TDA did a few nuclear-related projects back in the 90s, mostly in the former Soviet states, with cleanup, safety, things like that. And then we didn't do a ton in the aughts and the early teens. We did a few reverse trade missions. But at that point, we were looking at, our feasibility studies weren't really, sufficient size to be able to support, say, a new build, large-scale nuclear reactor. However, with 2019, we started to look very closely at SMRs as that technology was advancing, and we were getting a lot of interest in that. So that's driven a lot of our work over the last several years, although obviously we've worked with Westinghouse with the Poland deal, which we're very excited about, and then also with working with other elements of the nuclear supply chain, be it on the regulatory side or on disposal or storage of spent fuel and so on. So there's interest across the board, but the SMRs have been a major driver of that, interest in that. And then, yes, we're working closely with FIRST, like in Bulgaria. They've had workshops on, I think the storage issue is one where we've particularly coordinated. I know that my colleagues in the Latin America group are working with Laura's team as well as in the Indo-Pac region. So we're really trying to trade information and support gaps between us, or rather fill in the gaps, and certainly make sure and coordinating so we're not overlapping and duplicating any work.
So here is another question for Barbara. Is support from your office available for U.S. manufacturers of byproduct materials and devices? For example, fixed nuclear gauges.
It is, I guess the question is really, is there a public sector decision maker? So where you have kind of component products, or you're working through, let's say, a prime or a project developer or something like that, it might be optimal to have the company that's actually the bidder of record to apply along with you. But we are certainly trying to support all of the content in the program. I think the ultimate question is, if you are going for a contract with a foreign government decision maker, and that includes state-owned enterprises, public sector utilities, public sector universities, et cetera, we can support you in that. If you're a component within a larger group, sometimes we can still get involved in that, provided that the foreign government would have a role in the selection, let's say, of your company. And that's the key. That advocacy is always government-to-government engagement. So, yep, I hope that helps.
All right, thank you very much. Here's another one for Carl. When USTDA works on feasibility or FEED studies, is that funded by USTDA and the federal partners, or is it funded by the vendor?
So we like both. By statute, we are required to look at cost sharing and success fees to the greatest extent practicable. So in practice, what that means is when we have, this goes to the procurement process, so when I was mentioning with our feasibility studies and so on, is we can work with any contractor, any U.S. contractor to do the work that is selected by the grantee. And the grant, if they come with a contractor in mind, that's called sole source, and if they don't, then it's competed. For a sole source project, we typically are looking to that U.S. contractor to provide a cost share. And sometimes we'll get a cost share from the grantee as well. That's a little less common, but they usually, I mean, they have to be supportive. But looking for cost share from the U.S. company. And that will, because part of the rationale, well, the rationale for doing the feasibility study is that we hope that then afterwards there's going to be big, U.S. sales of some sort, that U.S. Content will be in the actual implementation. And typically, if there is a sole source, that U.S. company has some interest in the results, in, being the EPC perhaps afterwards, or they have technology that they want to implement or so on and so forth. So they've got a big upside, hopefully. And in such case, we expect then that they're going to put some skin in the game up front with us, which helps us determine that this is in fact a priority for that company. Because there's the moral hazard for USTDA is that you could have a company that goes around to grantees saying, hey, I can get you a free USTDA study for $1 million. I don't care what happens afterwards. I just want to make my $1 million. So we don't want to see that. So we're looking for activities that actually are going to go somewhere. So that's where having skin in the game in one form or another up front is something that we're looking for. How much that is depends on the circumstances. There are some where we don't have a cost share under very specific circumstances, but as a general matter, we do need that. And then sometimes we have, as I said, it's not a cost share per se, but we're looking for funding from other agencies because it's something that is a significant U.S. Government priority.
Thanks, Carl. This is one that maybe several panel members can take on. Which interagency coordinating mechanisms or forums do you find the most effective for supporting nuclear work? So maybe I'll just ask.
I totally agree. I will just add a few others for some of the technical work that we're doing in NNSA. We have program reviews where we coordinate with other offices or teams in the interagency. We work very closely with DOE, NE, the Office of Nuclear Energy, and so making sure that we're coordinating with their programs that are also looking at non-proliferation, but from the domestic point of view is very important to make sure that we're supporting each other and that we're not duplicating work. So we meet with them regularly. But yeah, Team USA definitely is a good, big one.
I'll just reiterate on Team USA, so appreciate DOE's taking the leadership on that, and also Laura's First Fridays, because she also publishes a nice list up front of what topics so that we know who from our agency would be most appropriate to participate in that.
And once again on Team USA, so all the advocacy cases that we get in the nuclear energy sector, we are vetting them through and getting approvals through the Team USA. So that way we ensure we have interagency support for the deal and that we're leveraging the expertise in the other agencies to ensure that yes, this is something that the U.S. government can actually get behind. So that's it.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. And I'm not going to jump on the Team USA bandwagon. Yes, we deal with that, and it is a very important mechanism. So NRC also participates in that as well. But for us also, I think it's our relationships with the individual agencies. For any particular countries, we coordinate very well with State Department and DOE when we're looking at where are we going to put our assistance efforts, capacity building efforts around the world. So we're very closely tied individually with the interagency, but also through Team USA as well. So I think it works out very well for the coordination among the agencies. Okay, here's another one. So for Carl, are there any changes in funding priorities between presidential administrations?
Of course not. Everything is always continuous. I will just say that TDA has been blessed with support consistently over the years from administrations and Congress of U.S. TDA supports U.S. jobs, and that's pretty much a very bipartisan interest on the part of members of Congress and also just the economy just generally. So we do see, changes in emphasis. Obviously, we've actually had a nuclear focus for a number of years now, for the last 7 years. Gas, U.S. gas exports are probably obviously a higher export priority in this administration than it was in the last administration. But overall, the idea is supporting U.S. exports and U.S. jobs is a consistent support among administrations.
Okay, thanks for that. And here's one that maybe a few different folks might want to weigh in on. This has to do with the fuel. So compare with large light water reactors, SMRs and advanced reactors will often require use of higher enriched fuel, such as HALEU. And this long-term economics of this fuel will likely require greatly expanded global enrichment capacity, as well as spent fuel reprocessing. So how are the fuel cycle implications being factored in to these engagement efforts, such as the security implications of HALEU?
I'll just say that looking at potential fuel sources is one of the factors that we look at in reviewing a potential nuclear sector project. Of course, the lead times are very long, so with looking at what the potential fuel source is and when the reactor might come online, we're not expecting that you've got your supply of HALEU today or something like that. So we're looking at the overall timeline and just need a plausible scenario. I will just make one other note about a unique element of US TDA's program in nuclear. Is our typical model for work is somebody built something here, like they built a power plant in, Nebraska, and in Egypt they're interested in building something like that. They want that technology there. We're using with commercially proven technology. If we were in the SMR and Gen 4 realm, using that model, we'd be 5 to 10 years behind the curve. So we are very forward-leaning here. We are going forward with all of our work because we want to support our industry up front to make sure that they have a leg up against all of the foreign subsidized competition that there is out there. So back to the fuel, again, it's a factor in looking at it, but again, we're being very forward-looking to accommodate the reality that this is a developing industry. In certain areas. Obviously, we supported Westinghouse AP1000. They built it here, and now they're going to build it somewhere else, so that's great. But for some of the other ones, we're further up, leaning in more.
All right, thanks, Carl. We're getting close. I think we have time for one more here. To what extent does the U.S. government require nuclear developers to meet the IEA safety standards to facilitate acceptance of their technologies in other national regulatory frameworks? And a second part of that, on top of the IEA standards, what about meeting European Union specific requirements where they may be even stricter than the IEA safety standards? Yes.
If I could just, I know this question was safety specific, but if I could just add that under Section 123 of the Atomic Energy Act, IAEA safeguards are a condition for export, and so I just wanted to add that safeguards perspective to that question. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that clarification too, Bego. So I think we are right at the limit here for our time. So first, I want to thank all the panelists. This has been a really good discussion, and the presentations they made I thought were very informative, and then the questions that we've got have been also engaging and stimulating here for folks to hear. So they'll be around for a little bit after the end of the session if people want to have some discussions and talk further. And with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone, and thank you for your participation today. And that's it. The session is over. Thank you.